Okay, so here we go. This is the long-awaited and much anticipated discussion of what's happened with Benny the Irish Polyglot versus Steve. I got a product to sell, Kaufman. Uh, the the follow-up from my first video, giving them very ample time to present their cases or to delineate their causes. So here we go. Let's see. Benny the Irish Polyglot. Benny goes to different countries, as he says, for 3 months to ostensibly learn a language and show us how well he can do in that language, which is just a cover-up for his trying to find a new niche within the travel writing industry. He's admitted this to several people. I know people have met him in person. He runs through his stuff a great deal. Those are not spontaneous ad-lib moments that he does. They're very well set up and practiced ahead of time. He is a frustrated travel writer, and we'll get back to him. I'm going to jump back and forth here. Steve Kaufman is, of course, the narrow-minded, left-brain guy who wants to put out his vision of what language learning is and dismiss everything else because he's got something to sell, which he's doing more and more of. And he, again, is a left-brain guy who wants to do it from a literate sort of way, meaning that reading and listening are his big things. Mainly reading is the general tone of what he does, getting more and more vocabulary, improve the lexicon through that way. The pluses then is that something that Benny does do that Steve never does, and that Benny is becoming etic and not just emic. Those are terms you're not going to know. Look them up. Has a lot to do with another video that I'm going to do to make about seeking actual fluency or bilingualism, which is even higher than fluency, and the traits that are involved within that. Now, to get to that, again, Benny's actually trying to attempt that. He's in the actual milieu. He's actually there. He's actually trying to become a sort of an insider as much as possible in a semi-tourist mode. Steve is not. Steve is an outsider, continues to be an outsider, does not try to become an insider, and thus will never know any of the inside things, and he tries to dismiss that as not necessary for him because he's sort of a dilettante when it comes down to the actual level of performance that he's trying to obtain. Now, that's not just him, that's a whole slew of the YouTube crowd. In fact, it's the majority of the YouTube crowd. There's only a few people who are not in that crowd, and I will talk about them in another video. Don't want to go off on that tangent, although it's incredibly important and salient to all of this. So let's go to another plus. Benny does not consider himself a linguist. He doesn't even try to come across with that as a label for him or a categorization of what he does. He's a language learner who goes to the actual environment. Now, Steve, once again, has gone through a lot of videos trying to establish that he is indeed a linguist. He is not a linguist. Steve, and all you sycophants of Steve who don't have real names and who are cyber cowards. Yeah, because you wouldn't be able to attend any sort of meeting, any sort of conference, or write any sort of anything without your real name. Okay? Those of you who are his fans, it's not a community. Okay? Do you know each other? Do you hang out with each other? It's not a community. It's a fan club. You and your little fan club don't know what a linguist is. I've challenged you, Steve, and you flatly refuse to comment because you're going to get beat the hell down if you try to do it. You just cannot do it. You can't analyze a language. That's what a linguist actually does. And those of your little people constantly mix. They don't know what theoretical linguistics are. They don't know what field linguistics are. They don't know what descriptive linguistics are. They don't know what computational linguistics are. They don't know what cognitive linguistics involves. You're just lost. You're out of your depth. You're out of your element. And what you want to do, of course, because you want to dismiss it, as if it has no value, because you, Steve Kaufman, have the greatest value and are the most great, incredible authority in the world on anything, the languages. Now, being multilingual does not mean you know a thing about linguistics, okay? Not one thing. And that's something you're going to have to deal with. Benny recognizes that fact and doesn't say that. That's a plus for him, okay? So you're both language learners, and you're both trying to be multilingual. Vinny has proven it in certain languages. Steve, you've done it in certain languages. You lived in some environments, but you no longer live there. You live in a 99% English-speaking environment in Vancouver, which we hear in every video. You get to tell us all about how exciting the weather is, how exciting your life is, how exciting your dinner plans are. Extraneous, that doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing. You know, it's yeah, you're very precise. So back to this. So now Benny has not made it in some languages because the truth of the matter is, in a lot of the languages that he did, he'd already had some background in them, and that counts. Even though he's saying that he wasn't able to really work with the syntax in languages like German, he still had the background, and it was there. He'd already put in some work, and a lot of people don't realize that if they put in the work, it's going to be much easier for them to acquire, to learn. What is this? The manatee? There's a French special about the manatee. Anyway, so the thing is that he's put in work, so that showed a vast difference between his ability to do something in 3 months as his ability to do something in a language which he had no background in. Now, Steve, of course, will not say 3 months. He'll say several years, which is extremely slow and is not viable if you were actually trying to function. But Steve is not really a functional type of guy. He's a hobby reading type of guy. You know, it's a hobby. It's a hobby. And I'm going to really get on that in another video again, because it's what the thing is. And he's not the only one. Moses McCormick, hugely, just a hobby, you know. And I will talk about that. I will just say, you know, Moses could pay a lot less for getting an actual tutor than he does driving around to 55,000 convenience stores and restaurants, babbling a few things, impressing himself, and paying all this money for eating and stuff. But I guess he hasn't weighed that out yet. But the point is that the one thing that Benny does do is he puts himself in the actual environment where you have to use it, and you have to use a whole lot of things, and you have to try to communicate, which is what language is. Language is not reading, Steve. And once again, Steve has refused to attempt to learn unscripted languages because he can't do it. I will say Benny could attempt to do it. He would probably go to some field linguists and try to get some skills to do it if you were trying to do it. But he would actually get, I would bet huge money, you put Steve or Benny in the same place, and I can do it around here because I live around a lot of minority languages, a lot of them very under-researched, and some that haven't been researched at all. Put them in those villages, and let's see which one can come out in 3 months and actually do something. I bet you Benny, I'll bet money on it that Benny will do far better than Steve, because his approach will work. Steve's will not work. So that means, Steve, you cannot attempt to learn over 90% of the world's languages. You know, you guys on your multilingual path, you can't even touch 90-something% of the 90% of the languages in the world. Now, of course, you want to dismiss that, blah blah blah. It doesn't change the facts. All you guys trying to derail things, Steve, you don't stay the facts. Benny also will do this. He'll red herring when he's losing an argument. He'll red herring and block somebody, and he won't allow their posts on his blog. Now, Steve is also doing the same thing from what I hear on his product site. You know, it's all about his product, and there's also 2 other things that are free that do the same thing that his does. There's a lot of resources. I'm not your one-stop, give you all the resources for free guy here, though. But do the research. There are a lot of things that doing the same thing that Steve's does that he's charging money for, and you know, that approach is limited, and there's a lot of things. I guess in one way, you know, Benny doesn't dismiss people. Doesn't dismiss. He doesn't dismiss Asher. He doesn't dismiss Chomsky. He doesn't dismiss who am I thinking of right now? B.F. Skinner, for example, and a lot of other people, and like Lakoff, Pinker, a lot of people that have influential information to tell you about actual languages and how they're used and how they could, if you've got any sorts of cognitive ability, you can put together how important that would be for actual language learning. Now, the linguistics field does not just care about language learning, which is all the Steve Kaufman fans and some of the many fans seem to get lost on. Once again, stick to the facts, okay? The thing is here, Benny has not said that he hates linguistics. Benny has not said he's a linguist. Benny has not decried areas of linguistics. Benny is not an anti-intellectual. Now, all those things Steve is. Steve is an anti-intellectual. Steve has no credentials. He's published nothing. He has not supported the claims that his method is good. He hasn't proven that his method works better than other methods. He'll dismiss Asher. He misunderstands Crashing. Doesn't understand Chomsky. Wouldn't understand Lakoff. He doesn't probably get Skinner's input into language learning, let alone actual linguistics. Steve can't analyze the language. Steve is unable to tell you a difference between phonemic and phonetic, for example. All these things are what a linguist can actually do, let alone have any touch computational linguistics, okay? So, that being said, where are they at? Benny at least replied initially to my first video and said, hey, yeah, blah, da, da, da. Steve did not. Steve ran his mouth on another site, from what I've heard, saying that, yeah, he would really, say some stuff to me that would really put me in my place. Really, Steve, what would that be? Disproving that you can't learn an unscripted language, proving that you can actually analyze the language, proving that you actually understand Krashen, proving that you actually deserve the title of linguist, which you're not. Okay, just because someone reads a bunch of physics books or thinks they're doing physics equations or sitting around with their little fans in the room, your hackneyed physics, doesn't make you a physicist. So the same thing goes with linguistics, Steve. I know you don't like to hear that because you want it to be in your domain, but that's how it is, and Benny does not say that, at least. Benny doesn't even claim that. So Benny had the guts and the wherewithal and the spine, the integrity to at least reply. He has not, of course, continued because he tried to do a red herring, and I beat him into the ground with that, and he couldn't. He has no reply. He's not used to people who can actually stick to the topic and construct a logical argument, which none of Steve's people or Steve is doing, because they want to automatically make a tangent. What does that have to do with my, what did I say? You go back, replay it, okay? So in the analysis here of what's happened, neither one of them has come out on top. They both have agendas. They like to have a little bit of a conflict going between the two of them, because that gets them more hits. That means that gets them more advertisement. It gets them better. Now they can dismiss that, decry that, or denigrate what I just said, but it's true. So they will, periodically get into it with each other, and of course they're at lockerheads on that. But it doesn't matter, because they're both trying to sell something. Benny is trying to sell getting his site noticed and that he can start writing strictly for travel stuff. And Steve, of course, is trying to get people to switch over to his method, which he mentions every 12 seconds. And Tim Ferriss warned him off of his board years ago for that spamming that he was doing. Steve is unable to obviously talk, show credentials, show proof of his method, number one. Two, he can't seem to say anything else. Of course, every other thing else doesn't work. That categorically Steve is going to deny anything else works, and his catch, it didn't work for me. Who cares, Steve? What's your validity here? Have you rejected the null hypothesis? What's your sample size? What were you using? What's your statistical? What was your control group? What languages? Tell us all about it, Steve. Tell us all about it, because you failed on that. So you haven't proven anything. Yeah. So that goes to the label I've called you, the anti-intellectual, which you earn over and over and over. And of course, you won't reply to me on anything that I say, because I will nail you on the topic. Now, Benny is just going off in his own little niche, which is fine. He can go off in his own little niche. And in result, what I'm saying is they both have products to sell. They both want to lure you in, and they both want to make money. In the language and linguistics, I'm not doing that. Okay, I'm someone who's a professional in these fields. I'm a professional language teacher. I'm a professional linguist. That is not, though, what I'm doing on YouTube. Those of you who know, it's the self-defense. World's Strongest Self-Defense is what I'm here to do for money. So in the future, though, if people keep asking me more and more about the certain services, I will include those. I will start to do some things that you won't get anywhere else, because I'm one of the few people from the academic world who's reaching out, because the academic world just dismisses these clowns, because they are clowns. They're not worth mentioning. You know, actual professionals are like, why would you care about these guys are idiots? You know, they know nothing. They've done no research. They can't even define terms. They don't even know what they're talking about. Their fans use little names like they're high school Japanese kids playing a stupid video game, which is true. You know, cyber cowards don't have any sort of credibility anywhere. And then they want to act tough. You don't have any street creds either. You know, it cracks me up actually. And then, of course, when I call them on it, they run away. Oh, you know. Well, there you go, you know. So intellectually beaten, physically beaten, if they'd ever try to go that route. So Steve and Benny, bottom line, they both have products to sell. That's what they're trying to do. Benny replied initially. Steve never replied. Talks to other people, has other people talk for him, mention him, blah, 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 blah. Benny has not written about anything about me on his blog or site. Steve has. I've gotten a lot of people sending me things about what's being said. It's not always Steve, though. Steve's not the instigator. It's a guy in Australia who is obviously on medication and doesn't work for a living and is very confused. Is one of the initiators. He's one of them. And you know, these are sad, sick people who basically are outpatients at a mental clinic. But beyond that, in the end result, neither one of them have proven their method in a structured way. I would, however, say that if you're looking at one or the other as the panacea, they're not. And that's on the whole thing, so that I'll go into a syncretic, eclectic answer. But I'm just reviewing those two. I'm not telling you what really actually works. I've told you before, look at all my other videos. I've given you lots of information here for free. So I will end this by saying, once again, you must have a real name and a real photo. Out of hand, if you try to write something and you think that the guidelines don't apply to you, and you're going to ask stupid questions, and you're gone. You're blocked. I'm not dealing with you anymore. I'm tired of this crap. You know, you've proven nothing. Cowards don't mean anything to me. You know. So come on over to the jungle if you got something to say to my face, which I doubt that you do. If you've got some actual citations and you're actually credible, then please, post, because that's what I have a higher standard than the other people. Yep. I don't delete comments. I just don't allow them on if you're a moron. If you can't follow the guidelines, if you're not up to standard, if you're not credible, if you want to give me some song and dance about, I don't want then go on to the police protection program, okay? Don't get on the internet, all right? Because you don't get to say things. All right. Anyway, so that's it. In the final analysis, nothing's been proven by either one of them. I think that Benny has more guts than Steve and does some more things than Steve. Okay, and Steve is very limited in what he's trying to accomplish and do. He's a hobby guy at best. So there you go. I can't recommend either one of them as the sole method, and I wouldn't recommend either one of them, and neither would any academic or anyone in the field of language or an educational field either. Oh, that's another thing. Benny doesn't know how to come across as if he knows about the educational policies, an educator, or has answers. Steve does. It's about selling his stuff, and yeah, right, Steve. Once again, as I said, then how come no government agency is using your method? If it's so great, why? Why not? Why, Steve? Why? Oh, it doesn't produce results, and it's not quick. Ah, okay. So, he also, I must say that they misunderstand FSI, DLI, probably the Peace Corps method, and some other methods that are being used for people that have to learn in a structured, intensive environment and actually produce results. Anyway, so that's it. I'll talk to you later and look forward to my video that has to do with emic and etic and secrets that only people who actually gotten to be bilingual know.